Welcome to Movie Recaps with Brian. Subscribe below for daily recaps. Today we're recapping Hereditary, directed by Ari Aster. Miniature artist Annie Graham, played by Toni Collette, lives a quiet life in northern Utah with her husband Steve, played by Gabriel Byrne, a pragmatic and emotionally reserved psychiatrist, and their two children. Peter, played by Alex Wolff, a sensitive and introverted 16-year-old, and Charlie, played by Millie Shapiro, a peculiar and artistically gifted 13-year-old girl with an intense attachment to her mother and grandmother. The family's strained emotional undercurrents are evident even before the funeral of Annie's estranged mother, Ellen Lee. At the funeral, Annie delivers a eulogy laced with ambivalence, alluding to her mother's secretive and manipulative nature. She's taken aback by the large number of strangers in attendance. Later, Annie sneaks away to a grief support group, revealing that her mother suffered from dissociative identity disorder and dementia, and that their relationship was deeply complicated. She admits they were estranged until Charlie's birth, after which Ellen became unnervingly involved in her granddaughter's upbringing. Meanwhile, Steve receives a call from the cemetery. Ellen's grave has been desecrated, her body exhumed and stolen. He withholds this from Annie, trying to protect her from more trauma. Charlie, though deeply introverted, shows signs of something uncanny. She constructs strange, unsettling figures from bird carcasses and random objects, and she clicks her tongue in a distinctive, rhythmic way. She appears to have some spiritual sensitivity and has disturbing dreams and visions, including seeing a fiery figure in her room at night. One night, Peter is invited to a high school party, and Annie, suspicious and controlling, insists that he bring Charlie along. At the party, Peter smokes weed and flirts with a girl, leaving Charlie alone. Unaware that the chocolate cake contains walnuts, Charlie eats a slice, triggering a severe allergic reaction. Her throat closes rapidly and she gasps for air. In a panic, Peter races her down dark, winding country roads to the hospital. As Charlie leans out the car window for air, Peter swerves to avoid a dead deer in the road. Her head collides with a telephone pole, and she is instantly decapitated. Peter, in catatonic shock, drives home and silently crawls into bed, leaving the body in the back seat. The next morning, Annie finds her daughter's headless corpse and unleashes a piercing wail of anguish. Her cries echo through the house, and the family spirals into unrelenting grief and isolation. The household fractures. Peter becomes withdrawn and guilt-ridden, haunted by what happened. Annie spirals into depression and rage, directing her grief inward and sometimes toward Peter. Steve tries to maintain order, but he grows increasingly concerned about Annie's emotional and mental state. At another support group meeting, Annie is approached by Joan, an older, warm woman who claims she lost her own son and grandson. They form a bond, and Joan later invites Annie to her apartment, where she demonstrates a seance ritual that supposedly allowed her to speak with her dead grandson. Though skeptical at first, Annie is shaken by the experience and becomes convinced of its authenticity. Annie attempts the seance at home with Peter and Steve. She appears to channel Charlie's spirit, speaking in her voice and unleashing poltergeist activity, objects flying, glass shattering. Peter becomes terrified. Steve is furious, believing Annie is having a breakdown. Peter begins to experience increasingly disturbing events, visions of Charlie, inexplicable sounds, and physical symptoms like sleepwalking, nosebleeds, and a sense of being watched. He starts losing his grip on reality. Annie begins to uncover evidence that her mother was involved in occult practices. She finds photo albums and grimoires in the attic, revealing Ellen's role as Queen Lee, leader of a cult dedicated to the demon king Paimon, a spirit who prefers a male host. Joan appears in photographs with Ellen, exposing her as a fellow cultist. Annie also finds the headless corpse of her mother in the attic, surrounded by occult symbols drawn in blood. Peter is increasingly targeted by supernatural forces. Joan is seen across the street shouting incantations, demanding Peter get out of his body. In school, Peter is seized by an unseen force and slams his head violently against his desk, shattering his nose in front of his horrified classmates. Annie, desperate and fearing for her family's safety, tells Steve they must destroy Charlie's sketchbook, which seems supernaturally linked to her. However, when she attempts to burn it, her own clothing bursts into flames, linking her life to the book's destruction. She begs Steve to do it instead, but he refuses, thinking Annie is delusional. When Annie throws the book into the fire herself, Steve is consumed by flames and burns to death. The act triggers Annie's full possession. That night, Peter awakens to find himself alone. His father's charred remains lie nearby. Naked cult members begin appearing around the house. Annie, now fully possessed, stalks Peter in an animalistic trance, chasing him through the house and up into the attic. There, Peter finds cult symbols, candles, and his grandmother's decapitated corpse. Annie levitates into the attic and, in a silent, horrific trance, saws her own head off with piano wire while Peter watches, paralyzed in horror. Peter, overwhelmed, throws himself out the window. As he lies motionless on the ground, a shimmering light, seen previously around Charlie, descends into him. Peter rises slowly, now eerily calm and silent, displaying Charlie's behavioral tics, including her signature tongue-clicking. He follows a floating Annie and other headless corpses into Charlie's treehouse, now transformed into a grotesque shrine. Inside, the naked coven members bow around a makeshift idol, a crowned mannequin bearing Charlie's severed head. Joan places a crown on Peter's head and proclaims him King Paimon, declaring that they have corrected the mistake of his female form and found him a suitable male vessel. The film ends with the cult chanting in reverence, and Peter, Charlie, now the host of Paimon, gazes out silently as the camera pulls back into the darkness. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe below to watch more movie recaps with Brian. Comment below which movie you'd like to see recapped next.